war. It seems that the United States is preparing together with Israel to attack Iranian refineries and power plants, as it was reported by CBS News. And not only CBS, we've learned that from Israeli sources, from other major outlets, mainstream outlets in the United States. But looking at the situation, in your opinion, how is the war changing itself or remodifying itself? And what do you see out of this new escalation if they attack tonight? Because because all of the American embassies in the region, they were announcing that to all American citizens to get out of the region as soon as possible. It seems that something big going to happen.
Well, my reaction, I'm reminded of that famous quip that's been attributed to Albert Einstein. And he said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to work. Nothing has worked. And let's just itemize things, because the mainstream media is basically distorts and covers up much of what's going on in these wars, as well as many other important public policy issues. And if we look at the war in Iran, it's just been a complete disaster. Let me make 8 points. There's been no regime change. There's been no progress about the enrichment of nuclear on the nuclear side. There's been no advancement on reducing long-range ballistic missiles in Iran. There's been no cutoff of the support of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. 5, the Strait of Hormuz, it used to be open, now it's closed. 6, the bases in the U.S. bases, military bases in the Gulf, have been damaged, severely damaged. By the way, the reporting on this is kind of astounding. It's all watered down. There's been lots of damage, and in fact, a lot of the U.S. military troops have actually retreated from the Gulf and left the Gulf. 7, related a little bit to that, the U.S. alliance with the Gulf nations is not quite what it used to be. Let's put it that way. There have been holes put in that. And 8, of course, Russia and China have been big winners in this. So these waves of aggression have created nothing. That gets back to the Albert Einstein thing. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to work. So I don't have much else to say. I mean, nothing has worked, and they keep doing it over and over again and ramping it up. And I think with each ramp up, probably the U.S.-Israeli position is becoming more damaged all the time, because remember, the big reputational thing we haven't even talked about, the reputation of Israel is in the tank big time, and the U.S. reputation is going down the tubes very rapidly. You even have China has overtaken the United States internationally as being a much more attractive and friendly place than the United States. So when you hear the president of the United States talking like he was yesterday at Camp David, it's just a lot of gas. It's a spinner. He's spinning. Most of it isn't true, and the press doesn't even call him out on it, by the way. Even the so-called, this is very interesting, the press and media in the United States is supposed to have a leftish bias, which probably is true. I mean, I buy into that without looking in detail at all the analysis and everything. But do they call out Trump on these things? Not too much. And the reason is they're afraid of him.
Yeah. The
So
reports that go ahead.
yeah. Anyway, so this gets back to my old rule, Hanke's 95% rule, and 95% of what you read in the press and see on the media is either wrong or irrelevant. That's Hanke's 95% rule. And you see this in space. Let's just talk about the Gulf region, for example. In the Gulf region, if we look at if we start in 2008, that's a great financial crisis, and we go to the end of 2025, and we look at the GDP, gross domestic product per capita, adjusted for purchasing power parity. So it's all the good data coming from the World Bank. And I set an index in 2008 at 0, and then we see how. Excuse me, set it at 100, set it at 100, and then see where that index is at the end of 2025. Big surprise. The fastest growing country in the region is who? Iran. Their number into the end of 2025 was 115.7. The only country, it isn't in the Gulf, it's close to the Gulf. Iraq was also 115.7. Then it drops down to the Saudis, 113.5. Bahrain is almost identical to the Saudis, 113.2. And then we have Qatar, 99.9. The UAE, 97.1. Oman, 85.2. And Kuwait, really in the tank, 62.9. So they've sunk a lot. Now, is that the picture that you get in the media? No, the picture was Iran had collapsed. Iran actually is the fastest growing country in the region since the great financial crisis when you measure it in GDP per capita adjusted for purchasing power parity. So the distortions in the media are just unbelievable. And just yesterday at Camp David, speaking of Iran, Besson, Secretary of Treasury Besson, repeated what he keeps repeating the same number, that the inflation is broken out, and Iran is on its knees because of inflation. Well, and then he gives a number, and he always gives the same number, 180%. Where he gets that, I don't know. I'm the only one accurately measuring every day the inflation rate in Iran. It's 122% today on August 1st. So, and they know this, but they just say whatever they want to. So this is where we're at.
We had a report on Saudi economy. It says that during the war, not right now, during the war, the 40 days of war, and the repercussions after that, the ceasefire and MOU, before the attacks, the recent attacks on the oil facilities and refineries and oil storages were attacked recently. Before that happening, they were reporting that their economy, their GDP shrunk 4.8%, which, what is your understanding of the way that their economy is somehow suffering? Let's assume it was 4.5%, the shrinkage was 5%. And then you see Saudi Arabia attacking Iraq, attacking Yemen, and again attacking Iraq, while they're attacking together with the United States, attacking the Iraqi government, the part of the army of the Iraqi government. And while you see Iraq says that we were not behind those attacks on Saudi Arabia. But something so strange is happening in Saudi Arabia. I don't know why. How do you make sense of it?
Well, that overall GDP down by, let's say more or less 5%. The key there is that the oil industry was actually down 24%, and that's the biggest chunk of the economy. So the oil sector coming down is really put the kibosh on things. Now they they are exporting. They have been exporting some oil through the pipeline that exits on the Red Sea, but that's only, you know, a drop in the bucket. It's not the same as the exporting they were doing before the war through the Gulf. At the top, off the top of my head, I don't have the exact percentage, but it's significantly less. I think they're running like 40% or something of what they were. So that's what's sucking down the whole economy. Now, as far as what they're doing with the Houthis in Yemen and it's basically Shiite rebels in Iraq. It's not. I don't think they're direct. They've been in direct confrontation with the Iraqi government itself. I think they're these rebel militias, but I think it's a loser's game. That's my assessment. Why would you want to be involved? Number one, why would you want to be involved in a war with anyone? I mean, what's the calculus there? I'm a skeptic, because most of these encounters, if you look at them, Nima, after the fact, that they're losers. They cost a lot of money, number one, and usually don't accomplish anything. So I don't exactly know what the Saudis are up to.
How about Donald Trump? What is he going to achieve with the new attacks? How is that going to help him with the oil reserves, with the difficulties in the Strait of Hormuz? Today, they have the announcement of the Iranians that they said the strait is totally closed, nothing is happening, and the attacks on Iran. How is that going to resolve those issues?
It's not going to. I went through those 8 points where the war has clearly been a strategic, complete disaster for the United States, and I would argue also probably even worse for Israel in a way, and it's not going to accomplish anything. It'll make it worse. What is already a loss will be a greater loss after these attacks. So again, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting it to work.
Yeah. The problem is that the only reason that they may be able to force Donald Trump to stop these attacks could be through the economy, the economic pressure on Donald Trump. Is that gonna come, or you see that's
well, the war in general is very unpopular, and it is starting to affect the economy. You saw the second quarter GDP number in the United States was quite a bit weaker than the consensus had thought it would be. And the inflation problem is still there. That isn't going away anytime soon, and Trump's popularity is sinking to all-time lows. War is very unpopular, and it's just all going in the wrong direction now. What Trump hopes, I think, what he hopes, is that somehow these waves of aggression will ultimately force the Iranians to come to the negotiating table, and Trump will then say, I won. No matter what they negotiate, another memorandum of understanding or whatever it is, Trump is going to claim he won. So he's trying to maneuver get some movement to allow him to claim victory. That's what actually is going on.
Do you see?
his three. Remember that his 3 points that he got from his mentor Cohn. 1, attack, attack, attack. 2, deny, deny, deny. 3, claim victory, claim victory, claim victory. That's all. That's what's in his head. People say they can't figure out what's in his head. Well, that's not true. It's attack, 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 deny, 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 victory, victory, victory. That's it. So he's it looks like he's going to attack again, and he will deny everything that I went through on those 8 points that they lost, and he will claim victory. He keeps saying, by the way, not so much anymore because it's gotten kind of embarrassing. He keeps repeating that he sunk all the Navy, and he's wiped out the Air Force, and he's wiped out this, and he's wiped out that. But the fact is, the Iranians keep shooting ballistic missiles and drones all over the place. So he's kind of toned that down. But the premise here, his premise, he has those 3 points, but the premise fundamentally is always the same premise that governments use, and that's that the public is stupid and they can sell this stuff, and the press kind of goes along with it, and particularly with Trump. I mean, if all of the missteps that Trump makes and the false statements and so forth, the press should be all over these things. But just look at COVID, by the way. We had, Dr. Fauci testified this week. He didn't really testify. He took the Fifth Amendment 111 times so that he wouldn't have to say anything. But he's Dr. Death, basically. So what's the big deal out of that? It's something I know a little bit about because I did with Jonas Herbe and Lars Joning the biggest meta-analysis of COVID lockdowns that exist. We wrote a book on it, a peer-reviewed book called Did Lockdowns Work?, published by the Institute of Economic Affairs in London, and also a big journal article in the journal Public Choice called Were COVID-19 Lockdowns Worth It? And what we found is that we started, by the way, this was a heavy lift. We looked at 18,590 studies that had been done. And we, with the meta-analysis, you have to have very high quality data that you can normalize so you can compare the studies. We ended up with only 22 studies that were high enough quality to qualify. And our results were this. In the United States, we found that looking at the mortality rates, that 4,000 to 16,000 lives were saved by lockdowns. Now, to put that into context, flu each season kills 38,000 in the United States. And in Europe, we found that the lives saved by lockdown, 6,000 to 23,000, something in that range. But flu kills 72,000 every year. Now that study, those studies in that book were deep six by Fauci and the public health establishment, literally censored. Never really saw the light of day. I mean, they're published, and you can find them yourself pretty easily. They're all online. But this shows you how this system works. They didn't want to see our results because our results were lockdowns were the biggest public policy disaster maybe in the history of the United States. Remember, we had a tiny effect of lockdowns. They didn't save many lives, and the economy was shut down, completely shut down. I mean, the cost was huge, and it was a public policy disaster that never gets reported on. the other thing that doesn't get reported on related to Fauci and COVID is the fact now it's starting to come out. There was a good interview with Professor Jeff Sachs from Columbia, who's also an advisor to the World Health Organization. And Sachs made it pretty clear that COVID, the virus, was made in the good old USA in a lab at the University of North Carolina. And that research, then the virus was transferred to the Wuhan lab in China because they had a cooperative arrangement, and the leak occurred in Wuhan. But it didn't occur naturally, as Fauci and the establishment kept saying that it was. It was produced in a lab. Not only that, it was produced in a lab in the United States. The United States was responsible, a lab in the United States. Now, Sachs made very clear that this was very dangerous research, by the way, and the Department of Defense actually turned down funding it. They said it was too dangerous. They weren't going to do it. But a unit of the National Institutes for Health, which Fauci was the director of, they funded it.